Hello everyone and a warm welcome to our regular press briefing. My name is Monika Benstetter and it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers this morning. Here with us to provide updates and answer any questions on EMA's activities in relation to public health emergencies such as COVID-19 or monkeypox are Dr. Marco Cavalieri, the Head of Health Threats and Vaccine Strategy and Chair of EMA's Task Force, and EMA's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Steffen Thierstrup. As usual, Dr. Cavalieri will start us off with an update on recent developments. We then will open the floor for your questions. Few technical points before we start. Your microphones are presently disabled, but we will open them when you take a floor to ask a question. And also the briefing is live broadcast via YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Europe by satellite. Footage can be used free of charge. And now, without further ado, I give the floor to Dr. Cavalieri to update us on developments.
Good morning, and thank you for joining this press briefing. As always, it is my pleasure to update you on EMA's activity on COVID-19 and also monkeypox. In particular, I will touch upon the epidemiological situation, the combined administration of COVID-19 and influenza vaccines, the approval of COVID-19 vaccines for small children, and our usual update on vaccines and therapeutics under review. Exactly 1,000 days have passed since the World Health Organization has declared the COVID-19 outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. A lot has happened since then. Today, we have a plurality of options to protect us from COVID-19. There are 6 vaccines available for primary vaccination, 4 adaptive vaccines, and 8 therapeutics approved in the European Union. Let's start by looking at the epidemiological situation. 1 month into the autumn, we see a general increase in COVID-19 case rates and numbers of deaths in the European Union and European Economic Area. Infection and hospitalizations are rising in people 65 years of age and older. A new wave is expected in the coming week, driven by new Omicron subvariants, according to the data collected by the European Centers for Disease Prevention and Control. The pandemic is not yet over, and we are still in a global emergency, as noted by the World Health Organization last week. Therefore, our recommendation for EU citizens remains get vaccinated or revaccinated now, especially if your health situation puts you at high risk of severe disease. Currently, Omicron BA.4/5 subvariants are still dominant in Europe. However, new subvariants stemming from Omicron BA.2 and BA.5 have been emerging in different parts of the world. The presence of 3 to 5 key mutations in the spike protein is a striking common feature in all these subvariants. These mutations confer additional immune evasion to the virus. Last week, one of these new Omicron variants that is called BQ1 has been identified in at least 5 countries in the European Union and European Economic Area. According to the ECDC, BQ1 and its sublineage, which is called BQ1.1, will become the dominant strains by mid-November to the beginning of December. At the moment, it is unknown if BQ1 will be more transmissible or cause more severe disease compared to BA.4 and BA.5 subvariants. However, what is already known is that it has an increased ability to escape immunity conferred by vaccination, natural infection, including from Omicron, and resistance to currently available monoclonal antibodies. We are also carefully following the new subvariant called XBB that is quickly spreading in Asia and has already been detected in some European countries. These developments, they show that the virus is faster than we can ever be in adaptive vaccines. We should not continuously chase the virus as this persistently evolves, and we should only consider adaptive vaccines when the difference between strains in circulation and vaccine composition becomes major from an immunological perspective. This has been our approach so far: adaptive vaccine composition that can improve neutralization against circulating strains, while acknowledging that it is difficult to keep vaccines fully matching variants in circulation. It is expected that SARS-CoV-2 and influenza will be co-circulating this autumn and winter. This puts vulnerable people at an increased risk. Vaccination is one of our most effective tools to protect them against both viruses. We are working together with our EU partners, the European Commission, the ECDC, and the Member States to improve vaccination uptake. It is important work, and results can only be achieved by working together. As we speak, joint vaccination campaigns against COVID-19 and influenza have started in many European countries in preparation for the winter months. We urge all those who are eligible to take advantage of these options, as it can maximize protection against both diseases at a critical time. On our side, we will keep monitoring closely the safety of the co-administration of vaccines that target COVID-19 or influenza. For instance, for Spikevax, we have recently reviewed positive clinical trials results that show no change in the safety profile of the vaccine when given jointly with a high-dose quadrivalent influenza jab. Other studies also reported reassuring data with respect to safety and immunogenicity of the co-administration of influenza and COVID-19 vaccines, overall supporting the possibility of administering these vaccines at the same time. Combined administration of COVID-19 and flu vaccines should make it easier for member states to deploy their vaccination campaigns and could hopefully trigger wider vaccination uptake among citizens at risk. Last week, the first 2 vaccines for small children were approved in the European Union. These vaccines give national health authorities a tool to protect small children from COVID-19. The decision on children's vaccination lies with the member states. However, it would appear appropriate to vaccinate primarily small children with underlying illnesses to protect them from hospitalization and death. In the past, we have seen increases in hospitalization as virus transmission has risen, especially in this age group. The EMA Human Medicine Committee, the CHMP, has recommended the use of 2 of the original vaccines, Comirnaty and Spikevax, in small children from 6 months of age. The vaccine doses in these very young age groups are lower than those approved for older children. Comirnaty can be given as primary vaccination consisting of 3 doses of 3 micrograms each. The first 2 doses are given 3 weeks apart, followed by a third dose given at least 8 weeks after the second dose. Spikevax can be given as primary vaccination consisting of 2 doses of 25 micrograms each, 4 weeks apart. For both vaccines, the most common side effects are usually mild or moderate and improve within a few days after vaccination. As for all vaccines, EMA will closely monitor the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines as they're used in vaccination campaigns in the member states. During the evaluation of this extension of indications, our experts have looked at certain side effects where concerns have been raised in other age groups. For example, the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis in vaccinated children. No cases of myocarditis were identified in the clinical trials in this age group. Moreover, data from the United States indicate that 1.4 million children aged 6 months to 4 years of age who have received a COVID-19 vaccine. No cases of myocarditis have been reported during use in this population, and this also is very reassuring. Information available so far indicates that the risk of myocarditis and pericarditis after vaccination in children aged 5 to 11 years is much lower than in ages 12 to 17 years. It should also not be forgotten that the risk of myocarditis is higher among children with COVID-19. Also last week, another safe and effective adaptive vaccine was added to the portfolio of vaccines available in the European Union. The CHMP approved a new adapted Spikevax vaccine. This is a bivalent vaccine targeting the Omicron subvariants BA4 and BA5 and the original strain of SARS-CoV-2. Adaptive vaccine present our immune system with different strains of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in order to expand the immune response, especially towards strains that have circulated recently. It is the 4th adaptive vaccines approved in the European Union following the recently approval of Comirnaty and Spikevax targeting the original strain and the Omicron BA1, and Comirnaty bivalent targeting Omicron subvariants BA4 and 5 and the original strain of SARS-CoV-2. This adaptive vaccine is to be used in people aged 12 years and older who have received at least a primary course of vaccination. It can be used for revaccination regardless of the number of previous doses received, as long as the interval between doses is at least 3 months and preferably longer, ideally 4 or 6 months. The CHMP is also assessing the adaptive community vaccine targeting Omicron variants BA4 and 5 to be used as a booster in children aged 5 to 11. An opinion is expected at the upcoming CHMP meeting in November. Reviews are also still ongoing for 2 other adaptive vaccines which target other strains of the virus. Currently, we are assessing the Sanofi Pasteur vaccine called Vipreftin containing the beta strain. We expect a possible CHMP opinion on this adaptive vaccine in November. Regarding the EPRA vaccine, which contains both alpha and beta strains, we are still waiting for additional data from the company. We hope to come to a conclusion on this adaptive vaccine in the coming weeks. I would also like to give you a short update on COVID-19 therapeutics. With the rise of new Omicron subvariants, as already mentioned, currently available monoclonal antibodies will lack activity. We are exploring with developers and international regulators pathways for rapidly approving new monoclonal antibodies based on established platforms that could be readily deployed for tackling emerging variants. Antivirals such as Paxlovid or Veklury don't target the spike protein but other parts of the virus. This makes it more likely that they remain effective as other viral proteins are less affected. However, it will be important to confirm their activity is not impacted by all these variants. New antivirals that can be administered orally are under development and may provide a wider range of antivirals agents for treating COVID-19 patients in the future. Also, let me mention the review of sabizabulin, which is an investigational agent for treatment of severe COVID-19, which is continuing at the moment as new information has been provided by the sponsor. Let me update you very briefly on monkeypox. According to ECDC data, the epidemiological situation is reassuring. We see a steep decline of the cases and an apparent containment of the outbreak at the moment. We will keep collecting anyway evidence and monitoring closely the safety and efficacy of the approved monkeypox vaccine Imvanex and of the antiviral tecovirimat despite the drop in the number of cases. I will conclude by urging European Union citizens to get vaccinated or revaccinated against COVID-19. Now is the time to get protected in view of the upcoming wave. This is especially important for those at risk of developing severe disease, such as people over 60 years old, pregnant women, and those with comorbidities and/or underlying conditions. Take the vaccine that is offered to you as soon as possible, regardless of which variant it tackles. All authorized COVID-19 vaccines have shown to be safe and effective in protecting against severe disease. I will stop here and give the floor back to our moderator. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavalieri, for this comprehensive summary. So the floor is now open for your questions. When we give you the floor, I would like to invite you to switch on your camera. And I see that we have a raised hand from Victoria English from Med News. Victoria, please, may I invite you to ask your question?
Yes, I'd like to go back to Dr. Cavalieri's statement early in his presentation when he talked about the new variants. And to what extent do we understand how the BQ1 and BQ1.1 are different from the other variants that we're already familiar with?
Thanks, Victoria. Marco, please.
Yeah, so again, as said, these new variants, essentially, they are characterized that their key feature are these key mutation in the spike protein, including the receptor binding domain, which indeed they confer additional immune evasion. So we have already seen some preprints that showing that the immunity conferred by vaccine is reduced in terms of neutralizing antibodies when these variants are tested. So clearly there is immune evasion taking place here. What we still don't know is what the difference then in the behavior of these variants in terms of transmission and severity of disease. And again, some preprint are alluding to the fact that the infection deep into the lung is not different than what we've seen with other Omicrons, so which it's possibly a good signal, but of course needs confirmation. But at the same time, they also saw that it might be more fusogenic, which may lead to be more prone to cause severe disease. However, these are really preliminary data, so we need really to collect data on the ground, so clinical data that would tell us exactly what is the impact of these variants in terms of hospitalization and transmission.
Thanks, Dr. Cavalieri. The next question is from Rosanne Lesin from Mediapart. Rosanne, please, the floor is yours.
Hello. I have 3 questions about COVID-19 treatments and vaccines. For what proportion of severely affected COVID-19 patients is remdesivir used? The second one is the case of Lagevrio, that's molnupiravir, closed? That's to say it will not get a positive opinion for marketing authorization. And the third one is, when does the EMA plan to issue an opinion about EPRA's COVID-19 vaccine? Thank you.
Thanks, Rosanne. So 3 questions. Maybe we start with the first one, that's remdesivir and what proportion and usage of remdesivir. Maybe Marco Cavalieri can comment on this.
Yeah, so the use of remdesivir is very much scattered across European countries. There have been countries that have been using a lot and others that have not used it at all. So it's quite heterogeneous, I would say. However, it's true that it's an antiviral that is maintaining activity against all these subvariants. So it could be indeed a useful tool, particularly when used at the early stages of the disease, when patients are not already very sick, in order to prevent them from progressing to severe disease and hospitalization. The need for intravenous administration, repeated intravenous administration, of course, reduces or create complication operationally, and that's also why maybe its use is not as large as it could be. However, it's important, to maintain this agent in our armamentarium, as indeed with these new subvariants, we are losing the efficacy of the monoclonals, and therefore we need to resort to everything that we have available right now.
Then, Dr. Cavalieri, I think the next 2 aspects of this question are also for you. So this was a question on where we are in relation to the assessment of Lagevrio, molnupiravir, and also where we are in relation to the COVID-19 vaccine from HIPRA.
Yeah, for molnupiravir, as you know, there was a large study conducted in the UK called Panoramic that was recently reported, and we will be assessing all this data. And after a thorough assessment of this trial, we will come to a conclusion whether this antiviral can be approved or not. So it's premature to say, but we are looking forward discussing all this data before the end of this year. With respect to EPRA, as mentioned before, this week we are waiting for replies from the companies and additional data, and we really hope that all this new information will allow us to, solve all the problems that we had so far with this evaluation and move rapidly towards a potential approval. But of course, it's premature to say, and we will need to understand if this additional data indeed will be satisfying in respect to the queries that we raised so far.
Thank you, Marco. The next question is from Sarah Tayyab Ben Sharif. Sarah, please, the floor is yours. Sarah, so far we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My apologies. So my question is for Dr. Cavalieri. So we're seeing, just as soon as we've got these new bivalent vaccines, that the variant landscape is changing with the arrival of these new subvariants like BQ1. And I'm just wondering if you can bring us up to speed on where the research is at when it comes to pan-coronavirus vaccines that might help us avoid the situation where we're constantly chasing variants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marco, please.
Yeah, it's an important point, and indeed, we really need to think about how we can change the vaccine composition in a way that the immune response that is elicited by the vaccines will be able to neutralize a broad range of different variants and really provide, a secure pathway for the future. And what I can tell you is that there are a number of vaccines that are going in this direction that are under development. And we are talking to all these developers to see what we can do in order to facilitate the development of this vaccine and understanding what kind of evidence could be sufficient to support a possible authorization. However, I need to remind everybody that we are still in a bit of early phases with all these vaccines, so it will take a bit more time before we will be able to understand if these vaccines could be a viable alternative to the one that we currently have. But definitely an area that we need to work on, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavalieri. So for the time being, I don't see any further questions. I see one more question from Victoria. Victoria, please.
Yes, I'd like to go back to Dr. Cavalieri's statement that you're looking at new pathways for approving the monoclonal antibody therapeutics against COVID or to treat COVID. And I'm wondering whether you can give us a little bit more of an insight into whether this means more standardization of the approval pathway or what?
Thanks, Victoria. Marco.
Yes, so the point here again is that if we have to conduct traditional randomized clinical trials with efficacy endpoint, this will take quite a bit of time, and by the time we get these results, maybe the virus has mutated again, and then these monoclonals are losing activity. And even in the context of these randomized clinical trials, that can happen when new variants are emerging, which also make very uncertain what we might get from these clinical trials. And that's why we are exploring what can be done in terms of using pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic markers, or the neutralization activity in humans of these monoclonal antibodies as a potential surrogate endpoint that could be used for evaluating all these products. We are still a bit in the early phases, I have to admit, but we think that this could be a scientifically sound approach that at the same time would allow rapid decision-making with respect to new monoclonal antibodies.
Thank you very much, Marco. For the time being, I don't see any further hands. So that means I would like to bring this press briefing to a close then. Thank you so much, everybody, for your excellent questions. Thank you to Marco. Thank you to Dr. Tierstrup for being available for any questions. And thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Bye, bye-bye.